First of all, I would really like to thank the Finder committee, all of you, for this initiative. It's very near and dear to my heart. It's very timely, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been able to work on this. I am always very puzzled. I refer to myself as jokingly as a serial migrant, and I've always been very puzzled in whatever community I have lived in this beautiful world, that there were always, in the morning, I would have meetings with people who would always refer to, we can't find skilled, competent people in our organizations, or a more diverse community. And then in the afternoons, I would always sit in groups where people were saying, predominantly moms and female migrants, that were always saying, how do I find access, to the labor market? They're struggling to find access while, this is the same community on the same days. So when this came up, this, is something I have seen. But beyond that, I will just share a little bit about myself first, my background. My name is Paxi. Ik spreek ook Nederlands voor degene van jullie in Nederland. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, graduated from Erasmus University in Rotterdam. I'm the founder of impactmania, and I actually created and led many interdisciplinary programs at universities, mainly in California and Italy, and governments, State Department for the US Consul General in the US, and for corporations. My current role is I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Stax, which is a Berlin-based tech company, and I'm an official startup mentor for the German government. So I have a very deep tech background for more than 15 years, and spent a few years in humanities, working with universities, as I mentioned, in predominantly programs that center around migration, work, and especially, women's social, cultural, and economic impact, I would say. So thank you again for this initiative. This was, like I mentioned, really in my wheelhouse. So here in Germany, and I'm sure this is across the EU, we find ourselves in a puzzling situation. When I arrived here 3 years ago, I see, about 2 million people just in Germany alone, a shortage in the labor market. While on the other hand, there's about 2.5 million people looking for jobs. And so beyond the headlines in media, I wanted to find out for myself what's happening here, right? Can we use technology and AI to actually source and screen and select people into the market versus screening and sourcing them out of the market? So beyond personal stories, we wanted really to do experimentation, so mini experiments on ATS systems. We picked ATS because that's the first entry, so application tracking systems. And it gets very complicated because ATSs may or may not use AI, and we can delve into that later, but it is usually the first entry for job applicants meeting the company. So having an ability to then get sourced and screened into an entry of a company by an interview. So usually they don't have access apart from the job application they send in on an online tool, right? And the ATS then will decide who will get entry to a next step, meaning who will be invited for an interview. So these were some of the topics we picked. We wanted a better understanding of the current AI practices. I spoke with many US-based companies, very renowned AI companies in talent intelligence field, because there's very few still here in the European Union. We tested migrant females' resumes. So we had for 3 weeks long on a landing page the ability for you to upload your resume. So we wanted to mimic a job application process. We received 88 resumes, and with that, we tested the ATS system. We held focus groups, interviews, and I can share a little bit of what we've done here. And please, I don't know the format. Feel free to, or questions at the end, Gea, I believe. Okay. I spoke a little bit about this. The majority of the female here in Europe, in the European Union, even though they're 46% of the workforce, you would say 50-50, right? Pretty good. But most of the women find themselves in surplus occupation. So meaning they're very, it's a very delicate situation because there's many more of these people in these occupations than we need. And so you would want a better balance there. There's a mismatch, as we all know, between the labor we need and the labor that people, the skills and experiences that people have. So there's a gap there. So even though I'm looking for work, but obviously I'm not a systems engineer, and therefore, you know, we can't fill certain roles while there's people sitting on the sideline. This is not that we found this, but there's many research showing that even if you're equally qualified, but female and with a foreign name, we did see some of this in our own findings. It means fewer interviews. This has been thoroughly investigated, researched for decades, actually, right? This is not just an ATS or an AI problem. This is just a systems problem. The ATS exclude candidates that may be high performing, but not an exact match. We found this in one of our experiments that we did. And this was some of the suspicion, right, even from candidates, that they don't understand. I seem to be a great fit, yet I am not invited to any interviews. So Harvard has published this. This is just one of the examples. We have found this too. We have actually tested on an AI system for a hidden bias. And again, it's not just obviously an AI or a technology issue. It's a systems issue. It's a social, cultural issue, right? This is not just the technology is faulty, and if we would just fix the technology, we would, all our problems would be solved. So it's management, and we found this as well. All the talent acquisitions people we've interviewed from corporations in Germany, these are well-known corporations, did not wanted to be, they wanted to be anonymously supporting this project. We could name the company, but not assign which quote came from them. And we can talk more about this, but they said one thing that was striking, even though if I'm as a talent acquisition leader, present our management, the hiring managers, with a very diverse set of candidates, you are still dealing with hiring managers that need to be trained and supported in selecting a diverse, capable workforce. So it's a human, a dynamic that plays out here. And then obviously we looked particularly into the tools. So the ATS system. So Harvard found that we artificially constrain the talent pool. And that is because the ATS is very, it's 0 and 1s, right? So they look at keywords. Do you have enough of certain keywords? We had a job description for a project manager or a project manager online because we wanted a very wide kind of range of people applying for this job. They were informed that this was for this project. We actually started saying, let us collect resumes from a diverse population, so also native German, male, female, people with ethnic names, people with very kind of standard European names for here in Germany, because we figured that if we would only interview one set of population, we would never be able to tease out, is this their experience or is this a general experience? And so this was very interesting in the focus groups, having a diverse set, of answers, but also a lot of agreement on how the experience was dealing with AI systems in their job application process. So 110 participants. There were, like I said, 88 resumes, of which we selected 23 people to interview. So further kind of contacts. These were one-to-one interviews or across 3 focus groups. We spoke with everybody like this online in view, obviously had all their rights. Those we quoted, we went back and said, is this really what you said? And can we quote you? 16 AI experts. So these were AI experts or talent intelligence executives. We've interviewed even companies like Seek Out, which is a renowned passive database talent intelligence company in California, or are they in Oregon? In the US. And we've interviewed also AMS, which is a global, very renowned consulting agency for the big boys and girls in the world. So corporations such as Bayern, etc., use AMS for their workforce. So end to end, from sourcing, selecting to who do we, who do we train, who do we promote, etc. Participants breakdown, 88 resumes. We had 57 females, and then it became very complicated with who is a migrant, look at ethnic names, what is an ethnic sounding name. So I can share with you, on a different call, how complicated this gets on how to parse these things out. But our main question was, do migrant women experience the algorithmic hiring application process differently than other applicants? So we used those 88 resumes, and we, like I said, mimicked a job application process, meaning we worked with the VP of Diversity and Inclusion from Deutsche Telekom. Her name is Aisha. She actually mimicked what would happen if she would do this manually. So the old-fashioned way. You receive resumes, you spend 2-3 seconds on each, and you select them. So you categorize them. These are some of the questions. I will show you actually this slide. This was experiment number 1. We then went manually through these resumes and had categories. So this is a standard process in recruitment, category A, B, and C. So she did this process. We used the same resumes, and then experiment B was an ATS system. So we ran the same resumes through this ATS system and compared the outcomes. And I will go back to the findings, but I'll share with you experiment number 2, which is we used, and that's because I wanted to keep this in Germany, but I could not find an AI company that was really built for, there are AI companies, but not really built for stress tests on other AI systems. So good governance, like, testing outcomes, etc. So I worked with a German-led founder who actually lives in the UK, and the company is called Palki, and we tested resumes with Palki, and they do AI testing for other companies. So these are some of the questions we ask. For example, the job applicants, please describe one of your recent job search experiences. In the focus groups, we had 3 people we did one-on-one with, actually, much deeper 1.5 hours interviews. And then, were you aware of AI tools during this process? And how were you aware of these AI tools? What made you, think or believe that there was AI in play or some kind of technology? These are some of the questions we've asked the AI experts and talent acquisition leaders. So I want to point out these are some of the quotes from the job applicants. Wanted to point out a few things. When they all the participants really were frustrated about AI tools. I mean, no matter who you spoke with, male, female, native, not native. When they said we sent out a lot of resumes, we would ask them, what do you mean with many resumes or a lot of resumes? And for, there was a German native born and raised, project manager, and she said, oh, I've sent more than 20. But then when you would ask the people from, and this is an Indian woman here in Germany, and she meant 200 plus. So there was a very wide range of many, even though they were all very frustrated in, we do not understand what happens with my resume. We don't get any responses. When we get responses, it's in the middle of the night, so we know it's not a person looking at this. We get responses so fast that I know that nobody looked at it, and why am I dismissed? So those were mainly the frustration. Secondly, what we really found was there were a number of people who changed their names. And there's one example of a woman who legally changed her name. So not just first name, but also she had to change her last name, and realize that did the trick. And I know, and we can have more discussions on this, ATS now in the industry have been changing that things are blind. So there's no checking your names, etc. And we did test our own ATS system on this as well. Is name a factor? And this should no longer be a factor. But people still had the feeling that there's definitely something there. Then photo. In Germany, versus in the US, where I spent like 18 years, in the US, you do not put a photo on your resume, because the resume would get tossed out immediately, because there's obviously issues of, they don't want people to go back and say there was discrimination. So they don't want legal actions. Whereas here, we interviewed students that graduated from MBAs here, and they said they were taught. They had a whole session on how you do your resume here in Germany, and they were actually taught, and this is very recent, they just recently graduated, with what photo that needs to be on there, etc. We also spoke with talent acquisition leaders, and they said, oh, I wouldn't even consider resumes if there's not a picture on it. So this was an issue actually that came up a lot, also during the focus groups. And Peter, who all the names have been changed, but Peter has a name like Peter, a very European sounding or American sounding name. He noticed that once he took his photo off the resume, he, because of his very American sounding, European sounding, Western sounding name, he received more responses. So just something to leave you with. So again, the 3 experiments, 1A was conducted by, like I said, Aisha. She's at Deutsche Telekom. She's the VP of Diversity and Inclusion, is also Director of HR. She did a manual process of the resumes. Experiment B, the resumes then went to an ATS system, and this was not an easy feat. We took really months in trying to make decisions on how to do this, because all the ATS systems, all the ATS software out there are black boxes. There's no way you can test these systems unless you would hand over your data, and we did not want to hand over the 88 resumes. So we chose to use an open source, and I worked with Dr. Tejo here in Berlin. He runs an AI company, although not AI hiring tools, but he is deep into the AI topic. He does AI for manufacturing. Then we worked with, like I said, with a UK company, Polky, and there were 3 people in their team that are all AI experts, data scientists, etc. And they used a system to stress test. They usually used their own system to stress test other AI systems, and they processed 100 resumes for us. So these were the main questions. How does an application tracking system perform in comparison to the manual selection? Here are the findings. So when we had Aisha do this manual selection, there was a similar ratio in the pipeline and in the candidates of ethnicity, male, female. But I would like to note, she's of non-German heritage. She knew we were doing this project, And obviously, she's the VP of Diversity and Inclusion. I would say she could have been a little bit more mindful of being, very kind of even about this. Experiment 1B was, like I said, an open source system. And that was really interesting. One, we lost people because their resumes were not of a specific format. So for example, there were a few people who send in their resume as a visual, and this machine cannot process this. Machine does not process double columns, a lot of pictures, a lot of visual stuff. So there's already an issue with processing your data. So you could be the perfect candidate, but if you submit your resumes in a specific format that the machine doesn't like, you are automatically dismissed. So that's one. Two, the outcome of this, of the ranking of who you should be interviewing was wildly different. And of course, you can say one is manual, one is ATS, but we actually went through the resumes and labeled them. Who has real project management experience? Who has even project management certificates? And so the category A were very carefully selected, and they, in one of the tests, wouldn't even come out as the people you should invite for an interview. But somehow people labeled in category C came out to be the ones that you should be interviewing. So that was puzzling. And again, it's very difficult then to go in and see where it's a black box. So you can't really go and say, this is the reason. I had an advisor. He is the lead talent for engineers at Amazon and works in AI projects. And he said this is very typical because it learns from obviously historical data. So depending on even with the open source, what it has learned, it will use that to process these new resumes that are coming in. And then experiment 2. So experiment actually 1B, we did not find any statistical kind of relevance to bias. And again, it's a very small subset. We only had 3 weeks to gather resumes, but we did not find any blatantly bias in the system. Not being satisfied, we worked with Palki in the UK, and they have, this is what they do. And they processed 100 resumes for us. And they did find that 80% of the international resumes, so for them, international would be non-UK, received lower rankings. And there's a whole section of multiple pages on how they did the experiment, what they found. But the attribute international education was the worst in the ATS systems that they tested. Recommendations, short-term transparency in AI screening. So for example, companies should put a note and say, hey, listen, thank you for applying, but an AI system will review your work. You will hear back from us or not hear back from us, but that there's some clarity who's doing what. And candidate support tools, we say there's so many other tools out there that could help a candidate, but because a lot of people, this is so new for so many still, even if you're tech savvy, there's for example, Resume Matcher. They test your resume before you send it in. So this would be really good if people would be aware of these tools, and also maybe from the company are supported and say, please make sure you format it this way, or please make sure that that you treat your resume in a certain manner. Long-term recommendations for policymakers would be, we've got to be able to test these boxes, right? I mean, we have to have some, I understand companies need to make money, it's proprietary, but there needs to be some sort of certification that they're working with things that are open to testing, whether they self-test or a third party test them and there's a certification. This would, come from you as the organization. Periodic audits for bias mitigation. So currently, I found that it's up to them. So in the States, they don't have to do a stress test on their machines. Most of them, when they say, yes, we are very aware. By the way, this is another thing. None of the companies we spoke with said, oh, no, there's no bias in machines, in systems. And these are the AI experts we spoke with and the talent intelligence platforms. But even if they do a stress test, it's once a year. And that's really not sufficient, in our opinion. So equity demands more than unbiased AI. I think I referred to this. I think what we really need is a talent pool that is diverse. Otherwise, you always are trying to fix the problem from the outside versus from the inside. And this is our team. I'm very, very proud and very grateful to the team because we decided to pay the focus group participants because we feel when we ask people to participate, they're always the ones giving us data. So I wanted to give their contribution, like a gesture, financial gesture to the participants. So except for 1 or 2, 3 people actually on this in this group that ran operations for me and supported me. All the advisors are not paid. All the researchers are not paid. Otherwise, also there would be a conflict, I would say. So Michael is from Amazon and here in Berlin. Aisha is the one from Deutsche Telekom. And then you see some of the researchers here. Sabrina is from Palki, and Tejo was instrumental. He is here in Berlin and he has an AI company.
Thank you so much.